Russia says powerful foreign military and financial backing emboldens the Syrian opposition to continue terrorist activities. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Gatilov accuses terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, of being behind a deadly wave of bombings in Syria. Gatilov has painted a bleak picture of Syria's future. He says that the standoff will be hard to break unless Western and Arab nations take a harder line with opposition groups. Gatilov added that the continued foreign assistance to Syrian armed groups require Moscow not to leave its traditional ally defenseless. Meanwhile, Russia has warned Kosovo against allowing the training of Syrian militants on its territory. Russia's UN ambassador Vitaly Churkin condemned what he called disturbing information that Kosovo has been establishing contact with the Syrian opposition. Well, joining us now via Skype from Berkeley is a political commentator, Ralph Schoenman. Many thanks for joining us here, Mr. Schoenman. Now, this is not the first time Russia is slamming Western and Arab countries over providing support and training to armed groups that are wreaking havoc in Syria. But this time it even singled out Kosovo as a training center. Why aren't these calls being heeded?
Well, they've been made continuously. Reuters reported on the 10th of May a specific declaration by Russia condemning twin suicide bombings in Syria on Thursday and accusing foreign countries of encouraging and organizing this violence. In fact, you refer to Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov, who met with the Syrian ambassador to Moscow to condemn, quote, decisively these terrorist acts which have been taking place in Syria. And the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, went further. He stated that foreign states have been organizing this activity over a space of time. They were referencing in particular 2 suicide car bombs that killed 55 people and wounded 372 in Damascus, the deadliest attacks in the capital since the uprising against President Bashar al-Assad had begun some 14 months ago. But it should be made clear in this context here that what we are witnessing is essentially the hijacking of the protest movement that had begun in Syria in March of 2011, and it has been converted into a vehicle for installing basically a client regime of the United States and NATO in Damascus. And that's the real context for the formation of what is called the Friends of Syria, which is modeled upon the precise operation that was undertaken in Libya. The Syrian National Council, which is really a collection of Islamist politicians who have a history with the CIA and a certain distant and sometimes closer relationship to the Muslim Brotherhood, but their real tie is as assets to Western intelligence agencies. So these so-called legitimate representatives of the Syrian people, the Free Syrian Army, that are carrying out these armed attacks are doing so in the most intimate conjunction with the intelligence services of the United States, and in particular the feudal dictatorial monarchies under Washington's hegemony, namely Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which together had set up a $100 million fund to place these FSA members directly on their payroll, stating that they are sending lethal as well as non-lethal aid. Now, the consequence of this is a series of continuous terrorist bombings, the purpose of which is to destabilize the government and to create the conditions for internecine conflict, chaos, and the installation of a basically intelligence-operated government in Damascus, which is monitored and underscored and controlled as proxies by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and those emirates that are instruments of imperial policy in the
region. But Mr. Schoenman, Russia's warning on the backing of armed gangs in Syria comes as UN observer mission there has said things in Syria appear to be calm. Why is the mission so blind to the atrocities?
Well, you're asking a question that goes to the heart of the matter, because they are not blind to the atrocities, they are organizing them. Susan Rice, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, has dismissed all evidence in Syrian warnings about organized armed terrorists, and they are designated as terrorists, who are operating not merely with Washington's direct aid, but with Libyan forces and Libyan arms and Saudi and Qatar funding and supplied arms on the ground. Washington, said Susan Rice, is not putting all its eggs in one basket. Well, these eggs are car bombs. These bombings in Damascus and these series of attacks upon the population designed to elicit some response from the Syrian regime, and whether they do or not, they're still terrorist acts designed to destabilize the country, are precisely intended to prevent any political resolution of the crisis, let alone popular expression being given its due in Damascus. The Washington Post has stated that the U.S. intent is a military protection corridor which will allow these operations to continue unimpeded. And one interesting aspect of this, it is openly made clear that al-Qaeda elements, the same that were deployed in Afghanistan at the time of the destabilization of Afghanistan by the CIA, have been brought into play here.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, Mr. Schoenman. We have run out of time. That was a political commentator, Ralph Schoenman, there joining us via Skype from Berkeley. Mr. Schoenman, as always, we appreciate your comments here on Press TV.